Good evening. I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is the regular meeting of the Brookline Select Board for Tuesday, April 14, 2020. We're meeting with all 5 members of the Select Board participating remotely using the WebEx meeting platform. Let me start by saying that the message to Brookline residents from the Select Board, the Town Administrator, the Health Director, the Advisory Council on Public Health, and others continues to be stay home and save lives. Save your life by not catching the virus from someone who has it but has no symptoms, and save the lives of others who may catch it from you if you have the virus but don't have any symptoms. Stay in your home as much as possible and leave only for essential tasks. We're not going to define what essential tasks include. We do expect each person to use their good judgment, taking into consideration the dead seriousness of the COVID-19 crisis we are facing in Brookline and globally, in deciding whether they need to go out and about. And remember, for those of you who know, as the Wobblies would have put it during the 1918-1919 flu pandemic, an infection of one is an infection of all. So with that, let me make a few announcements first and then let other Select Board members add their announcements or updates. While we are bunkered down in our homes, why not use the time to learn some new things? For example, Boston University is offering a lot of online courses, seminars, and other educational activities, including an online mini master's in public health that is a no credit, no cost opportunity to learn about public health, the public health system, and what public health officials do and why. There's also much talk in the country about how the COVID-19 virus is exposing disparities in health outcomes from the virus and the underlying disparities in access to health resources. Brookline is one of the few Massachusetts communities that is actually collecting racial and other demographic characteristics of virus-positive cases. And working with the Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, the Health Department is reaching out to families that may need assistance to help them avoid becoming a COVID-19 statistic. You should also know that Brookline is way ahead of surrounding communities in beginning contact tracing. We have 12 individuals following up new cases, including school nurses and health department staff. We're also increasing the testing of individuals by partnering with Physician One urgent care provider to provide testing to individuals who work with a Physician One doctor virtually. And if the doctor determines that the individual has the necessary symptoms, that person can go to a drive-through test site in Chestnut Hill. During this difficult period, many town committees are still meeting, in addition to the Select Board. Those committees include the Surveillance Technologies and Military Equipment Study Committee. The committee will be reviewing and discussing how health surveillance technologies and practices vitally needed and used during this health crisis should be not used for nefarious purposes after the crisis and should be controlled by transparency and oversight by appropriate healthcare professionals. We don't want to create a situation where, for example, undocumented persons or persons with outstanding warrants or persons who are just paranoid are hesitant to report virus symptoms out of fear of what their information will be used for. The committee will try to identify the dangers and alert the community to the need for transparency and appropriate controls. And in that regard, remember, an infection to one is an infection to all, in terms of making sure that we don't discourage anyone from reporting. And to emphasize what we've been saying over the past week, everyone should wear face masks or other appropriate face coverings whenever they go out into the public, both to protect themselves and protect others. And just as a personal note, please don't throw those face coverings or gloves or other personal protective equipment onto the streets. I see a lot of that here in Brookline. I'm sure that's a problem throughout the country. Let's see if we can cut it down here in Brookline. And finally, can we lower the heat in our discussions of proposals like opening the streets to pedestrians and others? I don't think there's any absolutely right answer to this issue or any other issue that we discussed so heatedly. I used my judgment last week to vote against the proposal to reduce space on roads for parking to open up areas for pedestrians and others. I don't claim that I am necessarily correct on my position, and I'm willing to listen to new insights, new information, and maybe even change my mind. I'm not there yet, but I hope that you and other people who are on the other side are willing to also disagree without being disagreeable and adjust their thinking as new information, new insights are presented to them. So with that, are there any announcements or updates that other select board members would like to make?
Go ahead.
Mine's quick. The virtual town hall on faith communities will be on April 22nd at 10 a.m. I'll send out more information to both the TMMA listserv and on the Facebook townwide discussion group.
Thank you.
I was going to report that the Census Complete Count Committee is continuing to meet on Monday mornings. We are begging people, really, to make sure that they send in their responses. We're going to be discussing later the allocation of CDBG, that's Community Development Block Grant money. That comes to us directly as a result of our population, not in this census, but from the last census, and helps our vulnerable communities. This is just one example of why the census information is so important. If you've lost your form should look like this. If you've lost it, you can go to my2020census.gov, or you can call 1-844-330-2020. Again, that's 1-844-330-2020. And the census information is translated into at least 12 languages. So we hope you will all pay attention and help Brookline in this way by filling out your census.
Great, thank you. Ms. Hamilton, did you have something to add?
No, I just said the virtual town meeting for faith communities will be April 22nd. Okay. No worries. Got another plug.
All right. Okay, good. Anyone else?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. I've got three things, and I'll try to be quick. One, we are holding now, I cannot believe this, the 5th virtual town hall for small businesses and nonprofits. We started this on March 19th, and there's been interest, and we continue to hold these. This week, we'll be joined by Representative Tommy Vitolo, who'll be providing an update and also answering questions regarding pending legislation on the Hill. It seems that legislation on the Hill is always pending. Passed. And in addition, we're going to have David Gladstone from Brookline Bank, as well as Doug Merdstein, a CPA, will be on as well to help, again, help answer questions and provide whatever support they can to folks that have lots of questions about the what's been passing at the federal level and options locally as well. So we encourage all folks who own and operate small businesses, even folks who are employees at small businesses, who care about small businesses, to join us once again this Thursday at 9 a.m. For that virtual town hall. Information is on our website. The second thing is I wanted to provide an update on the safety net fund and where we are. I just got hot off the presses. Donations continue to roll in. I want to say thank you to for the generosity of Brookline residents. We now are up to, in addition to the $175,000 that the town put into the fund, $158,159 has been raised so far from 270 donations, including 48,000 and change just since Friday. So folks really opened up over the weekend and have been supporting this. I will continue to tell you that the need is great and we need you to keep on supporting. If you haven't yet given to the Safety Net Fund, please do. You can simply go to brooklinecommunity.org. And a reminder for anyone that needs support, you can call the number 617-277-8107. This fund is expertly managed by the folks at the Brookline Center. They would love to hear from you. Again, 617-277-8107. Incidentally, we'll be working on a virtual town hall to talk more about the fund itself. And that'll come probably maybe sometime next week. We'll get you some more information on that when we have it, so you can hear about the fund, how the money's being used, some really great stories that I'm already hearing about people that are being supported by this. So please continue to give. And then my final update is just a very happy birthday to one Heather Hamilton, select board member. This is an interesting way to spend a birthday, no question, but glad to have you here with us.
It's the first birthday I can recall where I don't get cake.
You can eat cake in-house.
Sure.
I did get some frosting.
Okay.
There you go.
That's the best part sometimes. At any rate, any other updates or announcements? Okay. Devin, do we have any public comments?
No one signed up for public comment ahead of time. We do have a couple of residents on the line. But
May I just briefly, I'm sorry, before you get to that, I'm sorry, I did forget one important thing. As we've been supporting the Safety Net Fund, I also want to remind people to support the food pantry as well. Just was on a call with them this week. They were, during normal times, they were doing 1 truckload of food per week. Now they're doing 3 truckloads of food per week. They're up to serving 350 to 400 households per week here in Brookline. That's 350 to 400 households. I don't even know how many people that is. But per week in Brookline, they also need your financial support. So please do, if you can, if you're able, give to the food pantry.
And I'll just add that we had a virtual town hall where the food pantry spoke, and $1 of donation turns into $10 because the way that the centralized food bank works. So your dollar goes 10 times as far.
In other words, money instead of cans of food is what they need.
Correct. They don't know where the food has come from, and any surfaces right now, have to be disinfected. So it makes more work for them if they would much prefer the donation.
Okay. Anything else? So Devin, do we have comments? Public comments?
No one signed up for public comment ahead of time for this meeting, and no one who has joined us directly via WebEx has raised their hand or chatted me identifying that they wanted to be promoted to give a public comment. But I did want to take the time to just say, public comment is available as usual. People can feel free to join us directly through the meeting link and then privately chat me at future select board meetings if they don't have time to sign up in advance, and then we'll promote them to make their comment as a panelist and a participant in the WebEx event, and that you will be taking public comment in your special meeting on Thursday.
Great, thank you. Okay, next, question of approving minutes of April 7, 2020. Any corrections from the select board on this? On these minutes? Hearing none, I move approval of the minutes of April 7, 2020. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller? Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
I was muted. Sorry, I voted aye.
Okay. Ms. Heller? Aye. Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, question of approving the following appropriation transfer within the select board budget in the amount of $3,000 from permanent full-time to supplies and education, training, and conferences. Mr. Kleckner, anything you want to add to this?
It looks like Justin's going to bail me out here, but you'll notice at this time of year, you'll see a number of these transfers coming your way as we conclude the fiscal year, especially now where we have to probably move some money around to make expenses. But Justin, please go forward.
Good evening, Justin Casanova Davis, Assistant Town Administrator. First, good to see all of you. Miss you. The Town Administrator, Kleckner, is correct. You're going to start seeing a little bit more appropriation transfers as we get to the end of the year. This is moving $3,000 in salary savings down to our supplies and education and training conferences line to help pay for some of the bills that we normally pay for this year. So we're going to utilize those savings. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? No, hearing none. I move approval of the transfer of appropriations within the select board budget in the amount of $3,000 from permanent full-time salaries to supplies and education, training, and conferences. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Thank you, guys.
Next.
Take care.
Thank you. Next, question of renewing the lease at Temple Ohabe Shalom for BEEP classrooms. We've discussed this in the past, and we basically confirming the decision of the select board of the school committee to go forward with this lease for BEEP spaces. We have a memo in our packet explaining some of the details of this, plus a copy of the lease itself. Any questions from the select board? Or is there any further information on this that maybe the school committee wants to give us?
Hi, no, this is Matthew Gillis, Director of Operations for the school department. This was something that just took a little while to get settled. And I gave you a summary of what changed in the lease from the prior lease, as well as when we renegotiated, space. We're looking at staying at Beep and Beacon for the next 3 years for sure, and maybe a fourth year. But when New Driscoll comes online and New Pierce theoretically gets approved and comes online, we don't think we're going to need to continue to rent that space, because then we will have added 2 classrooms at the Ridley School, former Devotion School, 3 big classrooms at Driscoll, and 3 at Pierce, if all goes to plan. So that would be 8 classrooms replacing the 5 there. So we'd be dropping out of that lease. So that's why you see so many option years in the lease agreement.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I'll just say that I know that this was when there were some discussions about maybe moving folks out of there pretty quickly. There were a lot of family members that were spoke up about the great experience that they've been having there at Ohabe Shalom, and so this is great that they that those folks that have kids there now will be able to keep them there until they until they age into the schools, and for those that are looking for Beep experience, they can plan ahead also in the future, knowing that a few years from now, some of this will be moving elsewhere. So I think this is good. I hope we got a good deal on this as well. But I think it's a good move right now.
Well, the deal is what we got, so it's in there. So any other questions?
We were able to negotiate the price down from what they had initially bid.
And we have less time available in the facility, so that was a important part of the negotiations. So.
I'll just add that I'm happy that there's a path to getting out of rented space for BEEP, and that our development projects, our contemplated development projects, are going to create the necessary classrooms in-house, so to speak, so that we can redeploy those funds that are going towards rented classrooms to other purposes within the school system, and also give more of a uniform experience in our school buildings. So that's a glimmer of good news this evening.
Down the road, yes. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I move approval of the renewal of the lease at Temple of High Shalom for BEEP classrooms. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, going on to our calendar, question of approving the appointment of Feng Yang as acting chief information officer. Mr. Kleckner, you want to give us information here?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you all know, our prior IT director, which we refer to as the Chief Information Officer, Kevin Stokes, resigned from the town and pursued a position in the private sector. And I am seeking to make an acting appointment this evening. I do want to say that I want to give kudos to Kevin and, of course, his staff, that in this crisis, we really learned how reliable our system is. We have a very strong infrastructure for the town's technology, and it's no small matter that Kevin Stokes was involved in that. So I did want to just mention Kevin's prior tenure and the contributions he's made. But he is gone, and I don't know whether he is how he knew that we were going to have a crisis like he did, but he left literally right before we began to go into crisis in this country and in Massachusetts and in Brookline. And I was very fortunate to have Feng Yang, who has been with the town for almost 24 years now. Previous to this, she was the director of IT applications and digital services, involved in a lot of applications for the town, especially GIS, which she really created for this town. So Feng has been with the town, as I said, for 24 years. She's highly educated with a master's degree. Spends a lot of time educating herself on behalf of herself and the town, and really has done a really remarkable job during this latest crisis. So I have no compunction about recommending that the board appoint her as the interim CIO for an indefinite period. It is my intent to go forward with a competitive and open search for the new position, but that's going to take several months given the situation we're currently at. So I respectfully request your approval of appointing Feng Yang as acting CIO.
I think at least in my experience, I'm sure other board members' experience, Feng Yang has been incredibly helpful in terms of getting us up to speed with this new virtual reality that we're facing. For me, I'm very glad that we have someone of her caliber to step into this position. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I just want to echo the comments of the chair and the town administrator and say I'm so appreciative and thankful for all the hard work that our folks in the IT department are doing. I've had the pleasure to work with them on a number of projects in recent weeks, some directly related to the COVID-19 situation. And I know they're working really hard to try and get town government online and to make it accessible to everybody. And I think the entire board appreciates their yeoman's efforts.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions? I move approval of the appointment of Feng Yang as acting chief information officer. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, special bond counsel appointment. Question. of approving the appointment of Jay Gonzalez of Hinckley Allen as special bond counsel for the Newberry Land Acquisition Project. Mr. Kleckner, you want to give us some background details here?
Sure, I will, and I believe Gina Franconi is here for some backup question and answer if we need it. So just as a matter of context, the town is pretty consistently in the bond market, issuing short or long-term debt, sometimes refunding and reissuing debt to try to take advantage of opportunity in the market a lot. We have traditionally been using Locke Lord, which is our bond counsel. We have a great relationship with them and continue to use them. This particular proposal and recommendation is not intended to replace our bond counsel. However, I do want to mention that Jay Gonzalez, who I think a lot of you know and is very well known in Brookline, is a former resident and member of our advisory committee and Secretary of Administration and Finance under Governor Patrick, and the nominee for governor at the last election, has developed a bond counsel firm with Hinckley Allen, a practice there, and has been aggressively marketing those services. He has spoken to me on a number of occasions, and I indicated to him that we were not at this time looking to replace our bond counsel relationship, but if there was a unique project that came forward, perhaps we'd give it a try and see how Hinckley Allen's services are. So as it turns out, the Newberry Land Acquisition, I think, is a very unique project, and now especially so given all of the delays and emergency actions around town meetings and town election. Actually, Jay was very involved at the statewide level in crafting some of these emergency legislations. So for a lot of reasons, we thought it was a good time to designate Hinckley Allen for bond counsel for this particular assignment. There is one issue that has been raised. All attorneys have to do a conflict review, and they did identify that they do represent Skanska, which is our general contractor, our construction manager at the high school project. As you see in their disclosure, they don't believe that creates any conflict. There's going to be an ethical wall created, and the two really separate projects, and I really don't see any issues going on there. So happy to answer questions as well as Gina, but we're recommending that Jay Gonzalez of Hinckley Allen be designated bond counsel for this particular project, which is the Newberry Land Acquisition.
Okay. I think this is a good choice. Full disclosure, Jay and I go back many, many years to Cleveland, Ohio, when he was with a law firm out there, and I was also. He's also Secretary of Administration and Finance during the time that I was on what was then called Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust. Of course, during that time, I worked with Hinckley Allen on a number of bond deals, a very good firm. So I think that we can't do any worse than Jay Gonzalez and Hinckley Allen. We're not looking for a new bond counsel firm, but it's always good to hear from other firms in terms of how they would approach a bond offering and ideas they may have in terms of making sure that the select board and others are well informed as to the purposes as well as the potential risk of issuing bonds. So I'm looking forward to whatever information, whatever insight, new insight that we can get from Hinckley Allen and Jay Gonzalez. Any other questions or comments?
I've got a maybe a naive question. Why now? I don't think the bond authorization is happening for a few months. So why are we taking this action now as opposed to closer to when the debt exclusion vote takes place or when we're prepared to go out for bonds?
Sure. Well, I think part of it is going back to what Chair Green said, that Mr. Gonzalez and his firm are trying to a little different approach at advising communities. They want to get in early. they want to understand, especially now when there are changes going on potentially with the town's election and the town, and so want to make sure that the warrant articles are correct, the motions are correct, especially given that. So it is true that we might not be going out for a while, if depending on the voter situation. But if we are going to do it, I think it's good to have him on board now. And he has actually been having some informal conversations with the town moderator as we speak.
So it sounds like we're anticipating spending some money, maybe a nominal sum, over the next couple of weeks or months in preparation for further action on this project.
That's accurate.
So, given that we're in a period of time where no one knows what's going to happen over the next few months, few years, I think it's probably a good idea to, get someone like Jay Gonzalez. They're geared up to understanding and advising us on the Newberry project. And as we get closer to the time of debt exclusion and issuing bonds, that time will serve us well if there are situations that we didn't anticipate early on. I guess, my concern is that the world has changed, and it's going to change even more by the time that any bonds are issued. And it's good to have someone on board early on rather than at the last minute.
I think Gina Fanconi is here somewhere. I think I saw her on the list,
I saw
her face.
Too.
Yeah.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Okay, I'm wondering if you had anything to add.
No, I think Mel is absolutely correct. If we bring them on now, the firm, they can assist us in making sure that they approve of the warrant articles that go before town meeting. There's also a lot of prep work and documentation that I need to put together throughout the course of the process. And it's just easier if I know it's going to be a new relationship. And if I have more time to figure out what they need and get my hands on it for them, it'll make it a lot smoother.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I move approval of the appointment of Jay Gonzalez of Hinckley Allen as special bond counsel for the Newberry Land Acquisition Project. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next. Thank you. Next, mitigation activities related to COVID-19. Question of adopting provisions of Section 10 and 11 of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 to defer the due date of property taxes, extend the period for applying for certain tax exemptions and deferrals, and to waive penalties and interest charges for certain delinquent municipal obligations. Mr. Kleckner, you want to give us some background?
Yeah, I'll start it, and then I'll ask Gina to follow up. So as she will tell you, probably the single biggest question we're getting these days at Town Hall is, what about my taxes? I can't pay. What is the consequences going to be? And so, fortunately, the legislature has been working diligently on this and passed an emergency set of legislation that essentially creates consumer protections for our taxpayers and people who pay obligations to the town. So as you can see in the memo that was attached, that includes extending the deadline for paying this, the current tax bill, which is was due on May 1st and will be extended to June 1. And then also has protections about meeting deadlines required for tax abatements, residential exemption, and then finally addresses penalties and interest for delinquent payments. So, Gina, if I could ask you to just summarize this and also explain how you're going to apply this for a few other things to make it more consistent for our residents.
Sure, thank you. So the deadline for the tax bill is June 1st. And the third on your memo letter C, it's about waiving interest on bills that were dated March 10th through the end of the fiscal year, so that the deadline would now be June 30th. And I want to make it clear that it's for bills that are dated after March 10th. And so if we have someone who is already delinquent from prior year, let's say, or forgot to pay their refuse bill several months ago, the interest will still accrue on those bills, but it is the bills that are dated March 10th and carried forward until June 30th. And so to make things even, because I know that I am a resident of a community and I also pay these bills, to have to remember all of these deadlines, I think we can make it simpler, and we can actually take care of our residents by just saying, let's allow for real estate, personal property, refuse, water and sewer, and motor vehicle excise to be due on June 30th. And so if you can pay your real estate on June 1st, we're happy to take that on the due date, but we will also extend and allow for payments through June 30th without any interest or penalties.
Great. Any questions?
Maybe a naive question, but we've got enough money to cover our bills, given the extended deadlines that we're proposing to enact.
I would not call that a naive question. I have done the calculation. And we will make it through with people paying their payments through June 30th. I would expect that the mortgage companies will comply, the escrow companies will comply with the June 1st due date. They typically like to stick with those due dates. And they also feel that if they would rather pay for their mortgagees ahead of time and make payment arrangements with their mortgagee so that they don't jeopardize the lien that they hold on the property with this town jumping in front of theirs. So I anticipate that on June 1st, we will receive a majority of the payments.
Could I ask a question? This COVID thing is likely to go on for some weeks now. And I would think that it means that the economy is going to have some time to bounce back. And I'm wondering whether the legislature, if you know this, whether the legislature is contemplating any further deadlines, extending the deadlines out further, depending upon what happens. It seems to me that a month is not that much for people who are really hurting. And I worry about, people who've lost their jobs, and it's going to be difficult for them to, I think, make that 1 month. In effect, it's 2 months because you waive the interest.
Correct.
So in effect, it's 2 months, which is a good thing in my view. But, and I understand the town needs money to pay its bills as well. But I'm just wondering whether there's any movement at the state legislature level to extend those beyond the fiscal year.
I have not heard that they are going to extend, but I am daily checking to see what is happening with the legislature. So I will, of course, keep my eyes and ears open to see what changes might be. This is also a tricky time of year because it's our fiscal year end.
Right.
And so things are coming to a close, and I want to make sure that we're taking care of the people who need us to. But there's also closing the books and starting FY21 also.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No?
So, and then on the calendar, I think is the verbiage that you should adopt. If you can fashion that into a vote, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I move approval of, or I move that we adopt revisions of section 10 and 11 of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020 to defer the due date of property taxes, extend the period for applying for certain tax exemptions and deferrals, and to waive penalties and interest charges for certain delinquent municipal obligations. All in favor? Is that sufficient? Mr. Fleckner? All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, question of possible reconsideration of the vote to expand the public sidewalk and other public areas to accommodate COVID-19 social distancing guidelines. I put this on the select board agenda because I thought that after last week's meeting, we really didn't have a good, competent basis to make our advisory opinion to the transportation board. We received the memo from the transportation department like 2 hours before our meeting. At least I didn't have time to fully digest, review and digest that memo. We didn't have the full consideration of the transportation board, and we didn't have an opportunity to discuss with the health director the specific implications of this for with respect to the COVID crisis that we're in. So we've been able to listen to those individuals and entities. We have reviewed the memo, and I want to put before the board the question of whether we want to reconsider our vote, which was 3-2 to support option number 1 in the memo of the transportation director. So the first question is whether we even want to reconsider this, and then if we do, we have a discussion. But can I take a vote for reconsideration? Mr. Franco?
No.
Ms. Heller?
Yes. Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
No.
Mr. Fernandez?
No.
And chair votes aye. So we don't have to discuss that. Our position, which is advisory to the transportation board, who has the final authority with respect to issues like this, stands, and that's where it is. Next, okay, the last item is a public hearing, which is going to be deferred or postponed to April 21st, 2020. No other items on the agenda. We can adjourn unless anyone has any questions or comments or want to discuss anything else in more detail.
Mr. Chair, I would just note, I know we might have mentioned in passing, but the board will have a special meeting on Thursday of this week at 11 a.m. And the purpose of that is to consider whether or not the board should retain the Newbury referendum question on the annual town election ballot that's coming up on June 9.
Right. Thank you for reminding us. Any other comments or discussion? No, hearing none, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Please complete your census, give to the safety net fund, and spay or neuter your pets.
Say what?
Price is right.
Bob Barker.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye now.